everything just goes absolutely horribly wrong for Putin. Russians already kinda gave up on Bakhmut with absolutely no success in the last week or two, and some forces, including Wagner soldiers, were spotted going more to the south, to the next so-called Bakhmut Avdiivka, where, to be honest, Russians might do their final attack of this entire war. But you know what? Even though Russians started to concentrate more on Avdiivka, they even created special forces with the only purpose to help capture this city. But it was Ukraine which did recently one attack and was able to achieve 2 breakthroughs. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And as always, we begin with, exactly, some more cringe material. And as you can see right here, one of the hosts of the biggest propagandistic TV shows in Russia, Slavyev Live, he was screen recording his iPad, just like I do sometimes, but then he forgot he was doing this and he took a screenshot of this lady. You can only guess what he's going to do with this picture later that night, and if you want, you can give me your best suggestions down in the comments. But okay, next let's go to a little bit more serious news, infused with a little bit of Russian propaganda. And so, if you remember, during that last weekend, Russia announced that they were putting their nuclear strategic weapons in Belarus, close to the border with Ukraine. And Russia, specifically Putin, seeking the support from other countries to do this, specifically from China, later was pretty disappointed. Because China said that they are against this action. They said that there is no winners in the nuclear war, and that there is not supposed to be nuclear escalation, but instead in return it's supposed to be nuclear de-escalation. And the next day, whenever Putin was backstabbed with this Chinese statement, he looks like started trusting less, even his most trustworthy advisors. Because as you can see from this video, the guy came to these negotiations or a meeting with Putin, and Putin was like, okay, you're too far, I cannot hear you, come closer. Just keep going, no, stop there, stop right there, that's too close already, now you can sit. But okay, speaking about once again the nuclear escalation, recently in Moscow there were these billboards which were showing which items you should pack in your suitcase in case there is a nuclear emergency. And this time the Russian authorities did not say that this was hacked, but instead that this was a purposeful message from the emergency services of Russia. Which is like, are we having a spoiler alert here? And speaking about Moscow, recently this very interesting anomaly smoke was spotted in one of the Moscow districts. The locals reported that before this they were able to hear some loud noises, but the Russian propaganda could not resist anymore, and they said that this was the result of a factory, like putting this smoky air through one of these pipes way too fast. And yes, this is the official explanation of what happened, even though we do not see any factories nearby in this video. And ultimately, here is also a video from Russia, where they're starting to deliver its museum exhibition. That's what you think if you see this video for the first time. But in reality, they're delivering their extremely old military equipment, like howitzers which were used during the Second World War, most likely closer to Ukrainian front lines, once again confirming the fact that there is an extreme shortage of military equipment for Russians in Ukraine. And if you also think that this military equipment is just kinda old, and there's no way it can compete with the modern 21st century NATO weapons, I think this is pretty obvious, but I guess let's all together like this video and subscribe to my channel to see how many of us are right here. You can also follow my second channel, The Russian Dude Clips, where I post under 1 minute summaries every single day. The link will be down below. Alright, and now let's talk about actually serious news. And first of all, Germany reported that they delivered its 18 promised Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, along with some ammunition. Then we have a picture of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksiy Reznikov, who is saying that the British tanks Challenger 2s, American armored personnel carriers, Strikers and Cougars, and German armored personnel carriers, Marders, have already arrived into Ukraine. Next, let's go to the aerial vehicles, and our first picture comes to us from Turkey, where there's a brand new Bayraktar Kizilema drone is revealed. So far, Ukraine has been using the drones by this company extremely effectively, and most likely this new drone will be delivered to Ukraine as well. Next, we have the statement from North Macedonia, who is saying that they're also looking forward to transport 12 of their Mi-24 helicopters to Ukraine. And ultimately, France wants to buy back 40 of its fighter jets Mirage 2000 from United Arab Emirates and also give at least some of them, or maybe even all of them, to Ukraine. Alright, very soon we'll talk about the situation in the east and the most recent developments around Bakhmut and Avdiivka, but first of all, let me give you a brief update from the south. And first of all, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Russians continue their routine fire and occasional shelling across Kherson, Zaporozhye and Dnipro regions. Then we have a video from temporarily occupied Melitopol, and as you can see right here, some very loud noises were heard inside this city. Next we go to Mariupol, where the car of the chief occupational police of the city has been targeted. And then we have a video from undisclosed location in Zaporozhye region, and as you can see right here, President Zelensky has visited the front lines, was speaking with the soldiers and awarding them medals. Our next video comes to us from Donetsk region, and it looks like that Ukrainian soldiers stopped civilians and they started arguing, but later on this video turned out to be a complete fake produced by a Russian propaganda. And what makes this video to be undeniably a fake one is that the locals who live in this region, they're able to spot the place where the filming took place pretty easily and pretty quickly. As you can see, they even shared with us these photos which show that even the trees are absolutely identical. And later on, the exact location of this video was pinpointed deep inside Donetsk region, where there obviously cannot be Ukrainian soldiers. In addition to that, the woman driver is using a dashcam, which has been strictly prohibited since the beginning of this war, and also the audio experts were able to establish that the sound of the child crying in the backseat is most likely added in the post-production, and maybe even the dialogue, the conversation, has been also added as well. The entire video is more than 2 minutes long, and if you want to see it for yourself and determine whether this is a fake or not, I uploaded it to my Patreon, the link is down below. Alright, and now as promised, let's talk about the situation in the east, and then we can talk about the situation in Bakhmut and Avdiivka. And first of all, we have a video from Tula region, which as you can see right here is extremely close to Moscow. And as you can see from this video, another drone fell on this land. Next we go back to Ukraine. And according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, there were at least 10 battles across Kupiansk, Svatove, Crimea front line in the last several days, and Russians were not able to win any of them. But on the other hand, right here we have a photo from Svatove, which shows that Ukrainians using HIMARS were able to destroy a small military base of Russians located in this city. Next we go a little bit more to the south, to Slovyansk, and as you can see right here, Russians attacked this city and they claimed that they were able to destroy a military enlistment office. And then right here is the video by already familiar Ukrainian special forces called Kraken, which did a night raid in Solidar proximity. The entire video is almost 4 minutes long, that is why I uploaded the full version with sounds to my Patreon as well, the link will be down below and there's still 1 week of free access. In several seconds we'll talk about potentially the final attack of Russians in the history of this war in Avdiivka, but first of all, in order to make sense of this, we need to talk really quick about Bakhmut. And first of all, as you can see from this map, which shows us the changes in territorial control, this is how the Bakhmut front line has been changing for the last week, and as you can see, there are not much changes. According to the commander of Ukrainian forces, General Syrsky, the situation around Bakhmut is extremely complicated, but it is stable. And the only reason why it is so complicated, it is because Russians continue to just send waves after waves of their soldiers, basically just on inertia, because in the past this is something what worked for them, and this is what they think will keep working for them in the future. And yes, you heard it right, the situation in Bakhmut is more or less stable, which is also confirmed by the commander-in-chief of Ukrainian forces, Valery Zaluzhny. And yes, the defense of Bakhmut was extremely complicated. Many people even already lost the hope that Russians will be able to capture this city. Almost no one believed that Ukrainians will be able to keep it. And now, as you can see, the situation is more or less stable. But us, our community, me and you, every single one of you who is watching this video right now, we believed in Ukrainian defenders all the way until the very end. We still believe that they will win, and now the situation is switching in their favor. The situation in the east is changing, and Bakhmut is just the beginning. This will be the battle, which will be the turning point in this war. This will be the battle which will be remembered for a very long time, and it will be called the Battle for Bakhmut. The battle which has been so symbolic for Russia that they just kept sending soldiers to this small settlement, inflicting on themselves huge losses. And right here, for example, we have a video by Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is saying that approximately 5,000 Wagner soldiers already finished their contracts and received this immunity, or I mean not immunity, but like release from prison with the clearance of their records. And just think about this, 5,000. Wasn't it that Wagner recruited somewhere between 40 to 50,000? So you can only imagine how big are the losses of the Russians in this city. And so yes, if you remember just a couple of my videos from the previous week, you already know that the offensive of Russians in Bakhmut was very close to its culmination, which just once again has been confirmed several times by different Western sources, and they were also mentioning that possibly Russians were looking forward to launch their offensive somewhere else. And recently it has been established that one of these places will most likely be Avdiivka. One of the earliest confirmations of this came to us from the Ukrainian intelligence, which claims that they were able to spot Wagner soldiers relocating from Bakhmut south to Avdiivka. In addition to that, Russians reportedly created two formations with only its sole purpose to fight in Avdiivka region. The first one is called Uragan Assault Battalion, which will mainly consist of Russian quote-unquote volunteers. And the second one is called Wolves, which will be mainly a sabotage and reconnaissance brigade operating in Avdiivka as well. And even though it looks like that Russians are only preparing to attack Avdiivka, according to some local Ukrainian authorities, such as for example Vitaly Barabash, he is already urging the residents to leave the city. First of all, he mentioned is that as of recently, any civilian who wants to enter Avdiivka will be prohibited from doing this. Next, he declared a red level alert inside the city, and also that all the mobile services will be shut down, so that Russian occupiers will not be able to use it against Ukrainians. Potentially even the electricity will be shut down in the city, but nevertheless approximately 2,000 of its residents still remain inside Avdiivka and they do not want to leave. And so yes, even though these are the Russians who are technically supposed to attack Avdiivka, if we take a look at this map, which shows us the changes in territorial control, we can see that in fact it was Ukrainians who were able to achieve two breakthroughs with just one lengthy counteroffensive. First of all, Ukrainians were able to push Russians further away from this highway, which leads to Opotne and which Russians are using to resupply their forces in Opotne to the south of Avdiivka. And the very next day, Ukrainians were able to push Russians further away from this highway, which is located to the east of Avdiivka next to Kruta Balka, which Russians are using to also resupply their forces to the north of Avdiivka. And so, as you can see right here, with this one lengthy counteroffensive, Ukrainians were able to take under relative fire control both of these highways, which will obviously make it more complicated for Russians to resupply their forces to the north and south of Avdiivka, which at this very moment are the main directions of Russian attacks. And so, what I honestly feel right now is that this Russian offensive probably is the final attack in this entire war, because Russians will simply have not enough force to do it anywhere else. But what I mean by that is that this final offensive, it looks like that it already started to fail even before it started. And I have been tracking this war since its very beginning, every single day, and making reports on this. So I personally do not see any other possible directions for Russian attacks in the future. And so what it means is that as soon as Russia officially fails in Bakhmut and in Avdiivka, this is when we can see the turning point in this war, the beginning of the ultimate Ukraine's liberation. And just once again, if you don't want to miss any of these events as soon as they start happening, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. And if you want to support my work financially, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where there's still 1 week of free access. You can find all the links to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.